Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar, GP Tips and Tricks, Smartlist Designer, and SmartView. I'm Megan Turco, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we jump in, I'm going to briefly go over how to use the webinar console. The orange arrow on the right side of the console will let you toggle your control tray open or closed. And at the bottom of the control tray, you'll see a chat window. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time throughout the webinar via the chat function, and we'll get to those during Q&A at the end of the presentation. Also, for your audio settings, you should see an area marked audio settings on the console. If you're calling in through your telephone, please choose the use telephone option. Alternatively, if you're using your computer speakers, please select the use mic and speakers option. And lastly, I do want to note that today's webinar is being recorded. So within the next 2 days or so, we'll be able to send you a link to the on-demand recording of the webinar as well as to the slides for the webinar for anyone who's interested in viewing it again or sharing with colleagues who couldn't make it today. So with that, I would like to introduce today's presenter. Today's featured webinar speaker is Steve Chapman, who is on our Microsoft Dynamics GP team here at Armanino. Steve has over 15 years of experience in business systems consulting and 20 years of experience in management, accounting, and finance with small to mid-sized businesses in various industries. So Steve, it's great to have you with us here today, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation over to you.
Thank you very much. You know, Smartlist is probably one of the best reporting tools in Dynamics GP. And just recently, Microsoft released Smartlist Designer, which allows you to make your own smart list. So this is pretty cool. We're going to take a pretty in-depth look at it, and I've got actually a couple surprises I'm going to show you. Smartlist Designer is creating new smart lists. So there might be smart lists that aren't covered by something that you want. You can actually create your own. You can look at tables, you can look at views, you can get just the smart list that you want. You can also edit Smartlist Designer, smart lists that you've built with Smartlist Designer, and you can add go-tos that go to go to other smart lists or go to navigation screens within GP. So you can do all that in Smartlist Designer. We'll also look at another product. It's called SmartView. It's from a third party, and there's some advantages to SmartView. One is speed. I'll show you an example of how much faster it is than SmartList. And also it's a little better user interface. There's a lot more drag and drop options so that you can create your own smart lists or smart views a little easier. Also, there's multiple file filter options, so it allows you to really pinpoint exactly what you want. So I'm going to show you kind of two demos. We're going to take a look at Smartlist Designer, and it's going to be a little longer, and then we'll look at SmartView, just kind of give you a quick view of that. So Smartlist Designer, there's a number of things we can do. You can create a new one, and Smartlist Designer is accessed through Smartlist. It's a tab up in the upper left-hand side, and we'll take a look at that. And the thing to know is that when you create a new one, you can use any tables that are in your dynamic system. So they can be the standard Dynamics products, but they can also be any other product that you have loaded in your dynamic system. Plus, you can also look at SQL views that you might have or that you've made. You can also modify existing smart lists that you've designed in the past. So you might try it out, create a new smart list, and then if you want to go back and fix that, you can do that. So that's a nice option. It allows you to go back and kind of tailor exactly what you want. You can add go-to buttons to any smart list. You're probably familiar with go-to buttons if you're using smart lists. In Smartlist Designer, you can go to a smart list that already exists, or you can go to a navigation list, or you can go to a web page. And then I'm going to show you too a pretty good example of how to create smart lists from a SQL view. We'll actually go out and get a query that will create a new view in our system, and we'll see how easy it is to take that SQL view and turn it into a smart list in your Dynamics GP system. So let's take a look at it. So we're looking at Dynamics GP. This is version 2015. It's been out about a year. So what I want to do is let's take a look and create a new smart list. I created one previously. We'll take a look at that one. We'll go back and create a brand new one. But again, Smartlist Designer is accessed through Smartlist. So you can put Smartlist up in your menu. You can put it also, it's down here in Smartlist in the main drop-down. That's probably the only place that comes out of the box. It's also an administration area page. If you go to administration reports, you'll see a Smartlist option there. So let's open up Smartlist. Here it is, and let's take a look at one that I created earlier. And what I did is I created one that looks at the customer and vendor relationship in Dynamics GP. You may know that GP has functionality where you can take credit balances in your customer accounts and you can automatically move them over to accounts payable to create a vendor's check. So what I thought I'd do is take these three tables. There's basically three tables. There's the customer vendor table, which matches the vendor and the customer, and then there's the customer maintenance table and the vendor maintenance table, which I'm sure you're aware of. So this is a Smartlist that I created here, and it's got information from three tables, and we'll take a look at how we did that. And this has all the functionality basically of most Smartlists. I can download it into Excel. I can have go-tos there, and it's pretty functional compared to, it's pretty similar to the Smartlist that you're probably already familiar with. So let's just take a look at this. What I can do is highlight this here, and then I'll go and modify it so we can take a good look at what it is. So I'm modifying an existing Smartlist Designer Smartlist that I created. And in this window, I've got all the products that are available, and I've got all the fields that I selected to be in my Smartlist, and I can just scroll down. You can see the various tables. Here's the customer vendor master table, and then I connect to that the receivables customer table, and then down here at the bottom I've got the payables vendor master file. And all these fields are going to go into the Smartlist, and I can change it. So I can go back and modify it, and if I don't want a particular field, I can just get rid of it, right? And it goes away, and I'll change result. One thing that you do have to do is you have multiple tables, you have to join them together, and that's called a relationship, and the relationship is actually defined right here. The main table in my case is the customer vendor master table that has both that information. Then I link to that the customer table, the customer master file, and then the vendor master file table. So this is one that I created earlier. So let's create a new one from scratch here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this one in the sales area. I'm just going to do a customer smart list. So this is nothing fancy. You probably already have a customer smart list, but it'll give you an idea of how to create it. So I'm going to give a name to this. And let's call it something else. So I'm just naming my new smart list, and what I want to do then is find the table or tables or views that I want composed into the smart list. So I'm going to look at just the regular Dynamics GP tables, and it takes a while to open these up because it's going to look at every table that's available. In this case, I'm only selecting one, but you can select more than one, but you do need to create the relationship, identify the relationship, and put those together. What I can also do too, as this is warming up here, is I can copy Smartlist Designer reports that I've created already. And it's relatively easy to do. I just click on the Smartlist Designer that I created and hit New, and it'll take all that information and create a new one, and I'll show you that next. But here, these are all the tables that are in a sales series, and what I want to do is just get the customer master file, and I think that's right here. So I'll just select that. You can open up and pick individual fields, but what I usually do is just take the whole table. It'll bring in all the fields into my system, and then once they're in there, I can delete them from there as I showed you earlier. So this is just a very simple one, and you can see all those tables there, and there's certain fields that have additional information that you can modify the way that it prints out. For example, the dollar amount, you can specify the way the currency looks. So there's some changes that you can make to that field as it shows up in your smart list. One thing I always do is I execute the query. So what this will do is actually run the query. This is a SQL query that you just created, and it'll show you the results here. And that looks reasonable. It should be. It's a pretty simple one. And if I wanted to, I could create go-tos here, but I'm just going to hit OK. And when I hit OK, it's going to immediately put it into my smart list. You can see it on the left-hand side there. And it's going to start reading it. Now, the customer master file has a lot of fields, so it takes a little while to generate this from the tables. So if I wanted to create a new one, or copy one, it's easy to do. I mentioned that before. So what you can do is, let's go back to this, the customer vendor one here. So this is going to run that report, but if I wanted to make a new one, I could just hit new. When I hit new, it's going to bring in all the attributes of that existing smart list, but the name is blank. So what it's looking for is a new name, and when I put a new name in there, it will actually copy it and create a new one. So it's easy to create a new one from an existing one. It's easy to modify, and it's easy to create a brand new one. So Smartlist Designer, if you're used to Smartlist, I think you should take a look at Smartlist Designer. Now, one of the problems that people have are finding the table names, finding the fields within a table. So there's basically two ways that I do it. One is that in Dynamics GP, if I go back to Dynamics GP here, all that information is included right in the code. So the best way to get to it is to go to the Microsoft Dynamics GP menu, click down, and then go to Tools, go to Resource Descriptions, and then Tables. So that brings up this screen here, and here I can just select which group I want. I want a sales series here. This is going to bring up all the tables that are in the sales series. And there's a couple ways to look at this. You can look at it in the display name here, or what I prefer to do is look at the physical name, and this is the actual table name in the SQL database. And the reason I like this is because there is some logic built into the way that the tables were named and numbered, and it's kind of in logical order from the master file records to the work records to the open records to the history. So if I scroll down here and look for the customer master file, I can see it's right here. So let's select that, and that'll show me all the different fields in that table that I might be interested in. And if there's one that has some additional information, can't think of one right here. Let's take a look. This one doesn't have it, but I can hit the field information here, and it will show me any information about that field. In this case, I've got a format mask that's applied to that field. And if there was different values associated with that field, those would be listed here. So that's one way to do it, and that's available to anybody that has Dynamics GP. Another way, which is a little easier to grasp, is go out to the internet, and there's a lot of information out there. And one of the sites I like the best, it's from Victoria Hughton. Victoria Hughton is a Microsoft partner, and she's an MVP at Microsoft, which means she's spent a lot of time with GP. And she's very generous with the work that she's done for her clients. She makes them available on her website here, victoriahughton.com. So there's a couple things I want to show you. One is that I have the GP tables here. We were just looking at the customer master file. So I go down to RM tables here under GP tables and click. It'll open up a page that she put together that has all these tables. Now this is exactly the same information that's in the Dynamics GP that I just showed you, but there's some additional information. It's a little easier to grasp here. I've got all the tables here, and then for each particular field that's in some of those tables, they've got some of the values that are associated with that particular field. So again, one of the problems that people have in using Smartlist Designer is figuring out which tables to use, which fields to use, and really there's no quick way to do it. You have to kind of experiment, look at something other people have done. That's a really good example, and go to sites like Victoria's here. So we'll come back to Victoria's a little later. So let's move ahead here. So one thing I do want to do is show you how to create a SQL view based on information that's available on the internet like this. One thing that's nice about GP, the GP community, is that a lot of people that have worked with GP for a long time have a lot of content out there. There's videos, there's blog articles, there's information like this, and there's SQL views that are available that you can use for reporting, but you can also use for Smartlist Designer. So let's take a look at that. It's a little involved, but it's some basic steps, and we'll just take a look at how you would do that. So again, I like Victoria's site. She's got a lot of information here. And under GP reports, she's got different SQL views that are available. And I'm going to go down to payable SQL views. And again, this is work that she's done for her clients. She makes it available to people. And these are a number of views that are available that she's done that are not in Dynamics GP, but you can easily take this information and you can include it in Dynamics GP. So what I'm going to look at is called posted payments. This just shows all the payments in accounts payable in my GP system. So what you see here, this is a query that's going to create a view in my SQL database. So it's easy to do. All I need to do is copy this information. And you can see the action, which is it's going to create a view, and then there's some documentation, and then there's the actual query itself. So all I need to do is copy this query and copy down to this last line, which is important because it grants security access to the DynGP group, which is important. So all I need to do is copy this, and then what I do is I go to SQL maintenance, the SQL Management Studio. Now, not everyone has access to this, so if you can't do it yourself, you can probably have your system administrator do it for you. And again, all you're doing is creating a SQL view in your database. So this is my GP database, my GP system here. I've got the system database, which is Dynamics, and then I've got TWO database, which is my Fabricam company. So all I'm going to do is create a new query. And that's going to bring up a screen that allows me to paste the query that I just copied into it, or I can also use this to type in a query if I want to, but I'm just going to paste the one that I have. Right. So I've done that, and then all I need to do is execute this. And what it's going to do is it's going to create the view. It would if it worked, but it didn't. Let's try it again. It's probably because I have a new one in there. Let's change the name. Okay, so I created the query, and we can take a look at it. If we open up the database in SQL Management Studio and look at the views, it's going to show me all the views in GP. And the fact is that GP uses views quite a bit. It doesn't always look at the tables, it looks at the views. And also Smartlist primarily is built on views. Let's go down here, it's towards the end, I think. Here's the one that I just created, and we'll see that later. So let's exit this. Let's go back to Smartlist Designer now. I think we're done with Victoria here. Oh, we're not done with that. I got to start it again. I didn't practice that part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start GP again, and then we'll take a look at it. Sorry about that. So one thing I really want to do in this webinar is to kind of encourage you to look at what's available on the internet. Victoria Hughton's a great place to start. There's a lot there because it seems like it's very technical and it'd be hard to do, but it's not. You do it a couple times and you go, oh, this is really easy. And of course you want to be careful of where you get your information, but this is a great way to expand your reporting in Dynamics GP. So I can create Smartlist. I can also use these queries in SQL Server reports if I want to do that. So it just kind of broadens your experience with GP, and it'll give you a lot more value in GP. So there we go. So I'll start Smart List here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new Smart List and Smartlist Designer based on that view. So if I go to New, all I'm doing is create a new Smart List here, and I'm going to go down on the list here and look at views. And company here means it's not the company series in GP, it's actually the whole entire database for that particular company that you're in. And it takes a while to load, but it's basically the same concept. I can look at tables or I can look at views. And the reason I like views, there's two reasons to do that. One is that it's easy to find them on the internet. It combines, it does all the joins for the tables for you. So it already gives you pretty much a finished product. And then the other thing, which is really important, is that if you have a Smartlist Designer Smart List that you've created, you can then push that or publish it to Excel refreshable reports. Now, Excel refreshable reports, if you haven't used that in GP, you should really take a look at it, because what it does, it expands the output from Smartlist and puts it into an Excel spreadsheet that then creates a database connection back to the data in your GP system. So the value of this is that you can get the data into Excel, and then you can use the functionality within Excel to do formatting, graphing, whatever you want to do, and reuse it. So if you create a graph, for example, you can refresh the data in Excel. It's going to go out to GP, it's going to grab that data. And again, that's only available in Smartlist Designer Smartlist when you've created it from a view. So I've got, this is the one that I just created, so I'm just going to add that quickly. You can see that it looks real similar to what we looked at before. I can execute the query, and then that's it, basically. We'll just add that into the company database, or the company folder here. And it'll run, and this again is the query that I got from Victoria Hughton's internet site. I created a view in SQL Management Studio, then I just used it in Smartlist Designer to give me the results here. So here I can go back and I can add go-tos if I want to. Again, it's a real easy way to expand your reporting in GP. So there's one thing that you cannot do in Smartlist Designer. You can't edit Smartlist, the standard Smartlist that come with the product. And really that's kind of the only drawback, is that I've got all these nice Smartlists that Microsoft gave me in the system, but I can't go back and edit those. But most of those are based on views in your SQL database. You can probably find them in there and then create a new one in Smartlist Designer. So that's what I wanted to show you in Smartlist Designer, and we'll go back and just take a look at SmartView and kind of show you a comparison there. Okay, SmartView is actually a third-party product. It's created by E1 Solutions, and E1 Solutions is a very strong partner. And what they did is they've made kind of the Smartlist concept, and they've added really what amounts to some really nice user interface techniques to make it easier to use and to give you the data that you want a little quicker. So we'll take a look at it. One thing you can do is you can group it easily, and I'll show you how you can group. For example, here's an example of my vendors. I think it's a vendor aging actually, and I've sorted it by state. That's easy to do. We'll take a look at that. There's also some standard SmartView, Smartlist, SmartViews that are in the system that you don't have already, and they've added some functionality. For example, this is a SmartView aged payables report. That does not exist in GP. So SmartView kind of gives that to you. Plus, they've added some additional functionality, so we'll take a look at that. And then they've also added the ability to have basically an unlimited number of filters. If you're used to Smartlist, you know that you basically have 4 filters that you can identify to sort or to segregate your data in Smartlist. So In SmartView, you actually have quite a few options. You've got different operators, you've got additional operators here, and then you've got these equations here that you can use as well. So it's a lot more flexible from a filter standpoint. And then one thing too is you can select rows to copy into Excel. For example, in this example, you see I've got 4 rows. I can just copy those and put them right to Excel. So I don't have to send the entire list to Excel. So let's take a quick look at it. All right. So this is SmartView, and one of the first things I want to show you is how it's pretty fast, actually. So let's compare SmartView with Smartlist. And the thing I'm going to look at is in the financial area, I'm going to look at account transactions, and I'm going to look at all financial transactions. So I've got close to 30,000 financial transactions in my system. So SmartView is going out there and it's selecting the results, and you can see that I've got the option here, and you'll see this option in various SmartViews is I can select work, open, and history. In GP, it's all smashed together. All my transactions that are smashed together, there may be separate smart lists. So with SmartView, I can just select the buckets that I want to include in my smart list, and then it's going to give me the result. So this one should be loading up pretty soon. It takes about, maybe less than a minute to do. So there are roughly 28,000, and they're coming up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the Smartlist one, and we'll see that probably by the time of the demo here, it's still going to be running. So this is going a little longer than I thought, and there it is. So it's like 53 seconds to get that. And then if we did it in Smartlist here, let's just run the same one. It's financials, and I'll just run the same one, and we won't watch it. It's not that exciting. We'll go back to SmartView here. So in SmartView, let's look at something that's a little different, and that's in the payables area. There's a age payable trial balance. So this is nice because this does not exist in Smartlist. And what I want to show you here is how the user interface is quite different, because I can just drag and drop information to and from this SmartView. So for example, address, I don't really need that. Address 1, don't need that as well, and the zip code, I may not need that. Now over here, I've got some aging buckets. I've got the current one. I can just drag and drop that over here. I can do it at one at a time, or in this case, I've got 3 others that I want to drop over as well. So I can take all 3 and move them over to my SmartView. So that gives me an aging. And again, I can drill down on this. I can have there's go-to buttons up here that I can go to. But what I really like about this is that it has an option here. I can change the age date as of, I can't really see it here. Let's see if we can move this over a little bit. So I can change the date right here in the Smartlist when I'm looking at it. I can also click this Show Details, and then what that does is it grabs the same information, but now I've got drill down right here within my system, and I can see the detail in there. And if I wanted to sort this or group this by, say, for example, state, all I need to do is grab this and move it up in this header here, and now I've got it by state. If I want to do it by city, again, I could do that. Right? So now my whole list is subtotal and then grouped by state and city, and I can move that around and turn it on its head. So the user interface for SmartView is a lot easier to use, and it's more what you're used to. And I've already talked about the filter options. And the last thing I wanted to show you here is just go back to the summary, and we'll come out. Go back and off it. Excuse me, we'll go back and come back to it. So what I can do is I can select individual records here, and maybe they're not all in a row. I can select the ones that I want, and then I can go to Excel, and I can just copy them into Excel. So what's nice about this is I don't have to copy the whole group. I can just copy what I want. Oh, I didn't copy them. I forget that all the time. Let's go back here. So now it's just copied all that out into Excel without having to do the whole list. So let's take a look back at Smartlist, see how that's doing on that original task that I sent it. And you can see it's only up to about 7,900 records, and I think the total that came up was 28,000. So it's still working. So it's going to be much slower than the slightly less than a minute that SmartView brought up those transactions. So again, SmartView is a third-party product. But what we found is people really like it because it's easy to use and it saves a lot of time because you don't have to do the subtotaling and totaling and things like that yourself. So that's kind of what I want to show you today. I ran a little long, but let's see if anybody has any questions.
We actually do have a few questions, but Steve, I'll let you kind of do the conclusion part of it. Thank you for those of you who did submit questions. I think we'll actually have to answer them offline since we are a few minutes over. But thank you, everyone, for submitting those. We will definitely answer you in the next few days here. But Steve, I'll go ahead and let you do your conclusion before we close out here.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One is that if you're using Smartlist now, you probably really like it. Everybody seems to like it. And if you haven't quite started using Smartlist Designer because you think it's a little difficult, just give it a try. Work on something simple. Work on like the customer master file or the vendor master file. You'll get used to the interface and how to do it. And then you can start adding tables if you want to. And I really recommend that you take the next step, which is to find information on the internet like SQL views that you can create in your own system and then use those in Smartlist Designer. And finally, if you're not using refreshable Excel reports right now, you should take a look at that too. So there's a lot to do, but I think that you'll find out if you invest a little time in learning these tools, you'll get a lot more value from your system.
Thanks, Steve. Like I mentioned, you know, I know we did get a few additional questions in the last few moments here. Thank you so much for everyone for submitting your questions. We will definitely get back to you. And if you do have any additional questions, of course, Steve's information is up on the screen there. You can feel free to contact him directly. And then, of course, we have our website up as well if you just wanted to take a look at additional information before talking to anyone. As you exit the webinar today, there will be a quick survey. Please definitely take a moment to let us know your thoughts on today's webinar. We really appreciate your feedback. But thank you so much, Steve, for being our featured presenter today. And thank you to all of our attendees for sticking with us here a few minutes past the end there.